In his modest home in Manila, Manny Pacquiao woke before dawn on May 19, 2025, maintaining the rigorous habit acquired during years of preparation for the fights that transformed him into a boxing legend. At 46, his body still responded to the call of discipline, even though his battles now took place in political arenas, rather than the rings where he had established himself as the only man to win 8 world titles in different weight categories. His hands, once powerful weapons against opponents like De La Hoya and Mayweather, now held a pen and signed projects to improve the lives of the poorest Filipinos, those who, like himself in the past, knew the bitter taste of hunger and misery. The former fighter had spent part of the early morning following international news that had begun to reach the Philippines due to the time difference with the United States. His tired eyes paused on a headline that had just crossed the ocean from Washington. Former President Joe Biden diagnosed with aggressive form of prostate cancer. Manny felt a tightness in his chest as he read the details. An 82-year-old man facing a cancer diagnosis with bone metastasis, officially announced just hours earlier, on May 18, 2025, but which had been confirmed to doctors on May 16. For Pacquiao, that news resurrected memories of his own encounter with Biden in 2015, when the then American vice president visited the Philippines. On that occasion, Manny had been impressed by the humility and respect shown by the American politician, who confessed to being an admirer of his journey of overcoming adversity. Biden had briefly shared about the loss of his son Bo to brain cancer, a pain that Manny, a man of deep faith, would never forget. Now it was Biden who faced the relentless disease, with a cancer characterized by a Gleason score of 9, considered highly aggressive by doctors. The news indicated that, despite the severity, the cancer was hormone-sensitive, which would allow for more effective treatment, and that Biden and his family were evaluating options with doctors. Something in this information deeply touched Pacquiao's heart, himself a survivor of countless battles, from escaping extreme poverty in General Santos City, where he slept on the streets and went hungry, to facing the most feared fighters on the planet. Manny recognized in Biden's diagnosis a fight different from all those he had fought himself, but equally challenging, and felt an inexplicable connection to the former American president. The morning sun of May 19, 2025, illuminated Manila Bay when Manny Pacquiao made a decision. He would write a letter to former President Biden. It would not be a formal diplomatic gesture or a protocol note, but a sincere message from a man who knew the meaning of adversity to another who now faced his greatest challenge at 82 years of age. The former boxer had no pretense that his letter would reach Biden's hands directly, but he felt the need to express solidarity with someone who, despite cultural and geographical differences, shared values like resilience and faith with him. Sitting at his dark wooden desk, an inheritance from simpler times that he insisted on keeping in his office as a permanent reminder of his origins, Manny began to write. His words did not come from international etiquette manuals or political advisors, but from the depths of his personal experience. He told about how, at 14, he had embarked alone on a ship to Manila, with little more than the clothes on his back and the dream of becoming a professional boxer. He narrated the nights he slept on the floor of boxing gyms, the days he fought for meager wages to send money to his mother and siblings, and how perseverance transformed him from a hungry boy into an acclaimed world champion. As the morning progressed, the Filipino recalled moments in his own life when he had to face pain and despair, not only in the ring but also outside it. He mentioned in the letter how his faith helped him overcome each obstacle, transforming defeats into new beginnings. He wrote about how, upon receiving the news of Biden's cancer with bone metastasis diagnosed on May 16 and publicly announced just yesterday, he felt he needed to share his own story of hope with someone who now faced an invisible but equally brutal fight. In the final lines, Pacquiao expressed his admiration for how Biden had conducted his public life, overcoming personal tragedies such as the loss of his first wife and daughter in a car accident in 1972, and later, the death of his son Bo in 2015. Manny ended by talking about how true strength lies not in never falling, but in rising after each fall, a lesson he had learned both in boxing and in life. At no point did he offer medical advice or false hope, only the genuine solidarity of someone who knows the bitter taste of fighting against opponents that seem invincible. Late in the afternoon of May 19, 2025, Manny Pacquiao's letter had been digitized by his small team and sent through official channels to Biden's personal residence in Delaware, where the former president had been since the announcement of his diagnosis. The pugilist did not expect a response, nor did he seek the spotlight with his gesture. He understood that, in times of trial like that, the best gift for someone was space and respect. Even so, he asked his staff not to disclose the contents of the letter to the press, as he considered it a private communication between two men who, despite their differences, shared experiences of overcoming adversity. While the letter made its digital journey across the ocean, Manny kept his nightly commitment to visit a community center in a peripheral neighborhood of Manila. There, among young people who dreamed of escaping poverty through sports, he felt truly useful. That specific night, while guiding a skinny teenager on how to correctly position his feet in the improvised ring, Pacquiao thought about how life had taught him that each position, each movement, each decision, no matter how small it seemed, could determine the outcome of a fight. It was a lesson that applied both to boxing and to the personal battles that each human being faced, including the fight against a serious disease like the cancer that now challenged Biden. On the morning of May 20, 2025, as Manny prepared for his morning run, a Filipino journalist who had contacts in Pacquiao's team discovered the existence of the letter and published a small note on his personal blog. Within hours, the news had spread through social media, first in the Philippines, then in the United States. The major media outlets, always eager for human stories amid the whirlwind of news about the former American president's diagnosis, began to speculate about the content of the message sent by the legendary Filipino boxer. What no one expected was that, on the same day, Biden himself, or someone from his close team, would confirm receipt of the letter through a brief statement to the press. Without revealing the full content, the official note only mentioned that the former president had received a moving message of support from Filipino champion and politician Manny Pacquiao, and that Biden was deeply touched by the solidarity coming from different parts of the world, as he and his family evaluated treatment options for prostate cancer diagnosed with a Gleason score of 9. At noon on May 20, 2025, when the first reporters began to gather in front of his residence in Manila, Manny Pacquiao refused to give interviews on the subject. Through his spokesperson, he merely said that some human connections transcend politics and national borders, and that his message to the former American president was simply a gesture of solidarity from one man to another, both accustomed to fighting difficult battles throughout life. While flashes lit up outside, Manny remained in his office, silently praying for the 82-year-old man who, on the other side of the world, was preparing to face his greatest adversary. That afternoon in Manila, while the news about his letter made international headlines, Manny Pacquiao maintained his unwavering routine. He visited a children's hospital in the poor neighborhood of Tonda, a commitment scheduled weeks earlier that he insisted on fulfilling regardless of the media repercussions of the moment. There, among children fighting serious diseases with smiles on their faces, the former boxer found a strange peace. Talking with the young patients and their parents, without cameras or advisors, Manny felt reconnected with his own story and with the greater purpose he had found after hanging up his gloves. In Washington, the news of the Filipino boxer's letter to former President Biden sparked a wave of emotion. Political commentators, usually occupied with cold analyses of situations and statistics, were surprised to find themselves discussing the power of human gestures to transcend ideological and geographical barriers. Social media, normally a stage for polarization, saw a rare unanimity emerge around respect for Biden's privacy in his moment of fragility and admiration for Pacquiao's gesture, a figure who symbolized the human capacity to overcome seemingly insurmountable limitations. A few kilometers from the American capital, at Biden's residence in Wilmington, Delaware, the former president was going through the second day after the public announcement of his diagnosis. The medical details officially disclosed were limited: an aggressive prostate cancer with a Gleason score of 9, already with bone metastasis, but hormone-sensitive, which opened up treatment possibilities. Biden and his family remained reserved, consulting specialists and evaluating options, while messages of solidarity arrived from world leaders, ordinary citizens and, surprisingly, from a Filipino boxer who had crossed his path years before. The morning of May 21, 2025, dawned with an unexpected surprise in Manila. An American journalist specializing in public health issues had arrived in the Philippine capital with a specific mission: to interview Manny Pacquiao about his own story of overcoming adversity and how it could serve as inspiration for cancer patients. The reporter, Catherine Wilkins, had extensively covered cancer prevention initiatives during her career and saw in Pacquiao's letter to Biden an opportunity to broaden the discussion about the importance of early diagnosis, especially of prostate cancer, which affected 1 in 8 men throughout their lives. Initially reluctant, Manny ended up accepting the invitation for the interview after understanding that it was not about exploiting Biden's fragility or the private content of his letter, but about using his own visibility for a greater cause. In the improvised studio set up in a hotel in the city center, Pacquiao spoke for almost 2 hours about resilience, without specifically mentioning the former American president. He told how, in his boxing career, he learned that even the most intimidating opponents had weaknesses, and how this lesson could be applied to any fight, including against diseases that seemed invincible. The journalist, impressed by the depth of Pacquiao's reflections, asked him about the reasons that led him to write to Biden, a man with whom he had only brief official encounters over the years. Without revealing the specific content of the letter, Manny explained that, upon reading about the former president's aggressive cancer diagnosis with bone metastasis, something had resonated deeply in his heart: the universality of human struggle. He spoke about how, in the Philippines, many men avoided preventive exams out of fear or shame, and how public figures could help break this stigma. The interview, initially planned to be shown only in the United States, ended up going viral globally when excerpts were shared on social media. In particular, one moment captured worldwide attention, when Pacquiao, with teary eyes, spoke about how his mother taught him that true strength is not in never showing weakness, but in continuing to move forward even when fear and pain seem to paralyze the body and soul. Those words, coming from a man who had faced the most feared fighters on the planet, gained a special dimension in the context of Biden's diagnosis, transforming what could have been just a footnote in international news into a powerful reminder of the fragility and resilience inherent in the human condition. While Pacquiao's interview gained international repercussion on the afternoon of May 21st, in Delaware, the former President Biden's team was discreetly organizing an official response to the letter received from the Philippines. It would not be a public declaration or a grand media gesture. Biden had decided that he would personally respond to Pacquiao, with the same sincerity and discretion that had characterized the boxer's message. Sitting in his private office, where he now spent much of his time evaluating treatment options with medical specialists, the former American president dictated a few words to his closest assistant, reflecting on how life, with his 82 years of experience, continued to surprise him with lessons in humanity. Meanwhile, in Manila, the impact of Pacquiao's interview was beginning to manifest itself in a concrete way. Philippine medical associations reported a significant increase in searches for information about prostate cancer prevention, and public hospitals recorded growth in requests for preventive exams. The phenomenon was not limited to the Philippines. In Filipino communities in the United States, Canada, and Europe, men who habitually avoided medical consultations began to seek out their doctors, many explicitly citing Pacquiao's stance as inspiration to overcome fear and prejudice. On major American news channels, oncologists took the opportunity to explain in simple terms the meaning of the diagnosis disclosed about Biden: a prostate cancer with a Gleason score of 9, already with bone metastasis, but hormone-sensitive. The specialists clarified that, although it was an aggressive form of the disease, there were treatments available that could control its progression, without speculating on specific prognosis to respect the former president's privacy. Amid the technical discussions, several doctors mentioned how public figures, by sharing their experiences with serious diagnoses, helped normalize conversations about men's health and encouraged preventive exams that saved lives. At the end of that day, May 21, 2025, Pacquiao's letter to Biden had transformed into something greater than a simple message between two public men. It had become a symbol of the human capacity to find meaningful connections even in the most challenging moments, and a reminder of how seemingly simple gestures can generate waves of positive impact around the world. In Manila, before retiring to sleep, Manny Pacquiao watched a segment of the repercussion of his interview on local television and, for a moment, felt that he had won a fight even more important than any he had fought in the rings that had consecrated him. On the morning of May 21st, at Biden's residence in Delaware, the former president's routine had been completely reorganized since the announcement of his prostate cancer diagnosis with bone metastasis the previous Sunday. Meetings with doctors alternated with brief moments of rest, while his close family remained constantly by his side, offering the emotional support that no medical protocol could replace. That morning, when his personal assistant brought news about the impact of Pacquiao's interview, a slight smile illuminated the tired face of the man who had led the world's greatest power until January of that year. In an unusual gesture for someone always surrounded by protocols and formalities, Biden asked to watch Pacquiao's complete interview. As he watched the Filipino ex-boxer talk about resilience and overcoming adversity, without ever explicitly mentioning his name or medical condition, the former American president felt a curious mixture of emotions. There was a man who had been born in absolute poverty, slept on the streets, gone hungry, and yet found the strength to become one of the greatest athletes in history and, later, a politician dedicated to his country. Pacquiao's words, translated by the interpreter with visible emotion, reverberated with an authenticity that transcended cultural and political barriers. That same afternoon, in Manila, an envelope with the official letterhead of Joseph R. Biden's personal office had just been delivered by an American embassy official to Manny Pacquiao's residence. The boxer, surprised by the quick response, asked for privacy to read its contents, retreating to the same office where he had written his own letter 2 days earlier. The specific content of Biden's message would remain between the two men, just as Pacquiao had kept his own words confidential, but close members of his team noticed a special serenity in his countenance when he finally emerged from the office. At the end of that day, without any public announcement or search for recognition, Manny Pacquiao made a significant donation to a Filipino foundation dedicated to the prevention and treatment of prostate cancer in underprivileged communities. The gesture, carried out with the characteristic discretion of someone who understood the value of actions over words, would only be revealed weeks later, when the first results of the free examination program began to save lives in the outskirts of Manila. Meanwhile, in Delaware, Joseph Biden continued his personal battle against the disease, strengthened not only by the cutting-edge medical treatments available, but also by the solidarity that crossed oceans and broke down barriers, reminding him that even in the most solitary struggles, shared humanity offers a comfort that no technology can replicate. The afternoon of May 21, 2025, was ending in Manila, with a gentle rain refreshing the congested streets of the Philippine metropolis. In his residence in the Forbes Park neighborhood, Manny Pacquiao watched the water droplets sliding down the window of his office, while reflecting on the unexpected events of the last 3 days. A simple letter, written in an impulse of empathy upon reading about Joe Biden's diagnosis of prostate cancer with bone metastasis, had transformed into a global phenomenon that now inspired men in various countries to seek preventive care that could save their lives. The boxer, who had learned in the hardness of the rings the importance of each small movement, marveled at how seemingly insignificant gestures could trigger waves of transformation. In the United States, as the sun set in Delaware, Joseph Biden was finalizing a series of consultations with specialists who presented treatment options for his cancer characterized by a Gleason score of 9. By his side, as she had always been in the most difficult moments of the last 5 decades, his wife Jill held his hand, offering the silent strength that no medication could provide. On the table beside him, discreetly positioned so he could see it, was Manny Pacquiao's letter, a tangible reminder of how human connections could emerge in the most unexpected moments and places. In different time zones, 2 lives intertwined in an unlikely way. A Filipino ex-boxer who had overcome extreme misery to become a world champion, and an American politician who, at 82, faced his greatest personal challenge. Distant in geography, culture, and experiences, both now shared a deep understanding of how human vulnerability, when embraced with courage and authenticity, has a transformative power that transcends national borders and social barriers. The story of those two men, one born in American abundance, the other in Filipino poverty, converged at that moment in a universal narrative about courage, empathy, and the human capacity to find meaning even in the most challenging circumstances. As May 21, 2025, came to an end on both sides of the Pacific, the brief connection between Manny Pacquiao and Joe Biden had transformed into something greater than both. A powerful reminder of how small gestures of humanity can illuminate the darkest corners of human experience. In Manila, before retiring, Pacquiao said a final prayer for the man who, on the other side of the world, was beginning his battle against cancer, while in Delaware, Biden fell asleep with the serenity of someone who knew that, even in the most solitary fights, we are never truly alone. Two men, two stories, united by a moment of authentic human connection that no political or cultural difference could diminish. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.